Your RA race car kit will come with the car, which includes varying designs. Also the 4 plastic wheels and axles. And you may have purchased the stock car with the fender flares. You also may have purchased the lead weight kit as well as the graphite lubricant. If you purchased a stock car, it will come with 3 pieces, the main body and the 2 fender flares. The first thing you're going to need to do is to glue the fender flares to the body because they'll need to sit overnight while the glue sets. So you can use standard wood glue, which is probably the best, but if you don't happen to have that, plain old white glue works just fine. So you're going to take your glue, you're going to apply it along both fender flares, and then you will attach it to your model. These particular fender flares don't actually go to this model, but it'll work for the illustration. And then you're going to take a couple of rubber bands, wrap it around there so that it stays tight. Once you have both your rubber bands wrapped around the car, then you can line up the fender flares, making sure both sides are even. If you want to, if there's excess glue squeezing out, you can take a wet paper towel or cloth and wipe that off, but it's not hard to clean off once the glue is dried. So set that aside overnight, let it dry, and you'll be ready to work on the sanding the next day. The first thing you will want to do with your car is to sand it smooth. There are saw marks on the sides and the top of the car that need to be sanded out. I would suggest starting out with a 100 grit paper. Then you can move down to 150, 220 if you like, or even a 400. I would suggest that you tear off about 1/3 of your sandpaper, fold it into fourths so that you have a nice stiff piece to sand with. You just take your car and start sanding all the rough edges. If you want, you can sand these edges down rounded, make them a little smoother. Same with the back. Sand the whole car until it's fairly smooth with the 100 grit, and then move down to the finer grits until you have a very fine finish like you want. If you are going to be spray painting your car, I suggest you first coat the wood with a primer or clear enamel, and then apply your cover coat. Make sure it's the same type of paint. If you prime with enamel, you need to paint with enamel. Don't prime with enamel and then try to paint with epoxy, because it'll mess up. When spray painting, make sure you are in a well ventilated area and preferably free of dust and blowing dirt. Make sure each coat of paint dries thoroughly before applying the next coat. The first thing you're going to want to do with your wheels is to remove the tab that's left over from the manufacturing mark. The easiest way to do that is simply to bend it back and forth until it breaks off. It may leave a small burr on the wheel, which really won't affect it because this is the side that will go against the car and it won't be seen. However, if it's a large burr, you can take your pocket knife or razor knife and trim that off a little bit. The axles are pretty smooth as they come, but if you'd like to polish them a little bit more to try to get a little more speed out of the car, the easiest way to do that is to insert the axle in your drill, just where you would put your drill bit, and then you'll take some 3/0 or 4/0 steel wool. You will wrap the steel wool around the axle and turn your drill on. You can move the steel wool back and forth a little bit. You're just trying to polish that axle as smoothly as it can get. And then when you finish, you usually end up with a very, very smooth axle that will be the fastest it possibly can be. The next thing you're going to want to do is to test your axles in each wheel, making sure that they spin properly without any binding. If you do have a wheel that the axle doesn't fit in very well and certainly doesn't spin, the best way to correct that would be to take a drill bit that's a little bit smaller than your hole, insert it in there, and just with your fingers run that drill bit back and forth a few times, probably on both sides. That will knock out any burrs in there, and your axle should fit fine after that and spin freely. The next thing you're going to do is install your wheels and axles on the car. Remember that one side has the manufacturing mark on it, so you want to try to put that towards the inside of the car, which means that you're going to put the axle on the opposite side, the smooth side of the wheel. First thing you'll do is get the axle started into the slot. I put the wheel against the car. That helps hold the axle in the right place, and it's advisable to put your car on a block of wood so you're not damaging whatever work surface you're working on. Gently start tapping that axle in. You want to make sure that it's close but not binding. Get it as close as you can without it binding. You can see we still have a little bit of a gap there, and it should run nice and freely. Occasionally when you install a wheel, it won't be perfectly perpendicular to the side of the car, which will cause it to bind. The easiest way to correct that is to lay it on your block of wood. Take a flathead screwdriver, put it on the end of the axle, and gently tap it with your hammer to seat that axle completely in the slot. Once you've done that, the axle should be perpendicular with the car and the wheel should run fine. Once you've installed both the wheels on one side and you're ready to install the wheels on the other side, if you just put it on your block of wood and nail here, it's going to drive the wheels on the bottom side further in, make them bind. So the easiest way to avoid that is to take your block of wood, take 2 blocks of wood actually, and put it so that the wheel is in between the 2 pieces. And then you can drive the axle in from the other side without pushing the other axle in too far. And there you have your 4 wheels. The last thing you're going to want to do is to weigh your car. Remember, the official scale will be at the church before the weigh-in, but you can get the approximate weight on a postal scale just to see if you're in the neighborhood. If you purchase the lead strips to glue onto the bottom of your car, each of the strips weighs approximately 1 ounce. So prior to gluing them on, you want to weigh them out, making sure that you're close. 4.8 ounces would be close enough, but if you want to be as close to 5 ounces as possible, you can cut off a little bit of your last lead strip there and get pretty close to 5 ounces. Once you finish your RA Racer, you will be ready to go racing.